just do that. Cool. I did just want to start off. Just going to check one thing before I start. Yeah, cool. So I will share this. All right. So sorry for the late agenda, getting my life together. So I just had a few. Actually, maybe I'll do the minutes first. So if anyone has had the chance to review the minutes since last time, or would be willing to put their hand up to approve the minutes, they have been up for a while. Do I hear any volunteers?
Sorry, yes, I'm happy to motion
Yeah,
for approval.
I think I had a look at them, so I'm happy to second.
Thank you. Thanks, David. Would anyone be against approving those? I hear no. And anyone abstaining?
And if you abstain, use the reaction to put your hand up, to raise your hand.
Yep.
There's
50,
one.
50.
Yep.
Yep, thank you. Noted. Cool. So that'll pass those. Just a few announcements were there is an eRequesting TDG meeting tomorrow. That's all set, isn't it? TDG people. 12.
Yes.
That's 12.
Yes, it's
Daylight
12
savings.
o'clock Sydney, Melbourne, Canberra, 11
11.
o'clock Brisbane time.
Perfect.
I do not remember Perth off the top of my head. I'll be sending out a reminder for that today. There's an older placeholder ICS file kicking around in some people's calendars, which offers people a second but incorrect option.
Yep.
So it's
Yep.
12 o'clock Melbourne, Sydney, Canberra, 11 Brisbane.
Nice. All right, so I just thought I'd highlight that since it was happening tomorrow, and is new. Co-chair voting, we did go out the ballot. We had some responses for that. That was much appreciated. I have not done all the formal parts of actually acknowledging the co-chairs that have applied. All I can say is if you did apply, you're a winner because I think we'll have around 5 co-chairs for the group, which is kind of might seem like a lot, but I think there's a bit of stuff to do. So I will be getting back to all your co-chair nominees with an official request to accept that position, and we'll try and organise them some meetings to work out what we're going to do. Logistics wise, cool. So that's all happened. We're not going to need to have an election of any kind. I think that's probably a good number to go ahead with.
Did you get enough?
Yes, so we got enough. In fact, we got almost the ideal number, so that was quite good, and it's much appreciated for everyone that did apply because it helps a lot.
So you're saying that there's no need for a vote, or is that a vote will
No
go on?
vote.
Okay,
no,
right.
no need for a vote. I think we just got the perfect number, so I think and basically they're all regular participants and so forth. So yeah, we'll just confirm that with everyone who's nominated, but and then we'll just work out our next steps from that offline. So that was just to say that they had progressed. All right. So the other part of this
You've just muted yourself, Brett.
Thanks. So I just wanted to go back to, we did do chat about the IHI name sort of context issue that had come up before, and there was an issue to an action to go and draft up content. So I just wanted to go through and review that and see if we can sort of approve that that was what was discussed. So going back to the last meeting, we had a deal of discussion on different representations and possibilities, and we landed on having a code that indicated a usage. So there was basically that was the approach we were using to try and do that. So I did go away and do a draft of that. So just going to look at that. Yep, that's okay. So I believe we should have a draft of that. So it was just an extension. So it was very little narrative here, but I think mainly it'd be good to just get a name locked down. I went for individual name context. We kind of wanted to avoid the word use, and I did want to make it
Can you
clear.
see me to make that just a little bit bigger?
So Brett, because I missed that meeting. So it's an extension on the name element now. So we're just saying this name element is the name used for IHI validation by having an extension on that human name element. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So, and I think there was a question, like I'm not sure if we should, I think we should also perhaps do related person, or maybe not person, maybe not person, but related person I think is another place where we have I think we do indicate use of IHI.
Yeah.
Do you have an example in the branch as well?
So there's examples which hopefully makes more sense.
Oh, yeah. Yep.
So we've got a patient.
Yep.
We've basically got a new coding system for this purpose.
So I haven't really had time to review and look at this, and I do want to. So I'd love us to keep like walking through today, but could you send like, I guess what I think we should do, because I think it affects people who aren't on the call. And so I think we should, if you could push up a branch with this, and we can send around the branch and like call out the agenda that's coming, so that they can come to the meeting having reviewed that.
Yeah, that's good. I just really wanted to touch base and make sure this makes sense to everyone, and then we can do that next time.
Should that be a .au terminology?
Oh yeah, it should definitely be a .au terminology. Yeah, good spot. Good spot. So what I have done is this is all just in a fish spec here. So I imagine it's my example is wrong.
It's in the middle. Yeah.
There is. As I go. Good. So So effectively it's just a coded value on the name. And I think so there's some narrative to write as well. So I think that's probably important. And we ended up with a value set with one term in it. But there was some thought that there might be other contexts. I did do a little investigation into Indigenous names and stuff, but I don't think I found the right material. So
I
yeah.
did a bit of a look up on Meteor, and
Cool.
they seem to change it a number of years ago to something a completely different name. And it didn't reflect what I remember back in the noughties when we were having the discussions in V2 land around this. So yeah,
Sorry, what did they change?
name
What did-
context. There
Thank you.
used to be some stuff around name context in V2, and then that was reflected in the identity, like person identification specifications. I can't remember the Australian standard number, 50 something or other.
Yeah.
But it looked like it was changed in the 2010s, the name of the thing, and it's very different to what I remember it being, because it was around the use of for Indigenous purposes where they roam around from one community to another back then.
Yeah. That it'd be interesting though if there's like it's a potential that we could, if there was something needed, we'd have an extra flag to be able to make things more specific. The other thing I did find on my looking around for terminologies and things that might be relevant where there are some international published sets which are not part of the FHIR spec as such, but they are published terminologies, and these are, I think, version like V3 CDA terminologies, right? That do exist. But there's quite a few interesting things in here.
Yeah,
Like
Chief Red Cloud.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, but like obviously not IHI. But yeah, I was just casting around to see if there was a value set that made sense. But because this also goes into representations and things like that as well, which is not really what we're talking about. My favorite, do not use name. Yeah, don't call me. Yeah, so yeah, and there
Official
was things,
registry name.
yeah, and like this, I think some of this is a little bit subsumed by some of the use codes, but it's interesting to see because it's kind of like does cover more ground than what the FHIR use coding does. So I decided that none of those looked really relevant, but I just it was something that came across my plate. I was mainly looking at the Indigenous name and things like that. But anyway,
So this is an extension on use.
actually,
This list.
I think this is the V3 entity name use coding like value set. So it's a value set that has only existing V3.
It's not used for anything. Is
Not
that
used,
what you're saying?
yeah.
It's there, but
Well,
it's not actually used.
it may well be used in the CDA specs that are coming out in the near future. Right, yeah. Using the FHIR stack. So it's yeah. So there is some history there, but like as a resource, I thought that was interesting. It is published in the standard terminology sets. I think that's an old one. It's similar but different. Yeah, so there's some overlap, I think.
I mean, the problem at the moment is the binding is required, so it's not extensible. So we can't use anything other than what's already in that list.
Oh yeah. Good question. Actually that's a good question. Maybe it shouldn't be required.
But that's at the base level, like that's at the standard level.
Oh, is it?
Mm.
Oh,
Hang on,
So
hang on. This is an
Hold on.
extension that we're defining as an Australian
Yeah.
extension.
yeah,
So the binding strength is only what we have complete control of the binding strength.
it should, it should be.
yeah, I know, but that's why we have to do this extension, is because we can't extend use.
On your
So,
skill, yeah.
like
true.
that value set that Brett was just showing us, that it's kind of cool name use to or whatever, but we can't use that value set as
No.
use.
No, yeah.
It's certainly a candidate for the extension, but it probably has a bit of a conflicting name to some extent.
Yeah, I think it's a bit hard. So I'm not sure it's ideal. So it did come across my path on the journey. But binding strength is a good point. Do we want to make this like is this a very explicit extension that says it must be, or can you just have it is a codable concept. So in theory, like I could just have text based.
I think it should be extensible because if people do want to support other contexts, then they're allowed to do so.
Yeah, I think that's a good plan. I hadn't really thought about it.
Noting that without that being really defined here, we're not having a shared understanding of what the codes are and how to use them. I mean, yeah, I guess I do agree. I'm iffy on the border there of extensible or required, because if these are things that we want to understand, that it should come into this extension, into this binding.
Yeah, it depends. It depends if you want to let people put codes in there. I think because it being codable, you could just have no code, right?
True. By being extensible, you can use text only.
Yeah, which is only just like.
I think with extensible, if one of the extensible codes is useful, then you have to use it. You can't put in text in ignorance
Which
of
is
the
fair.
codings.
Which I think is what we want. Yeah.
Can we not constrain the extensible to be extendable to codes only?
No one
I think-
understands the extensible codes anyway, so what's the difference?
Well,
But-
yeah, the point is that the extendable codes has to be published and understood, rather than free text. So from the discussion that I had with sort of our FHIR International, we always consider extendable value sets to be extendable with codes and not extendable with free text.
Ah,
So if we follow that line of principles, then we shouldn't be allowing extendable with a free text.
I guess the question is, if you don't want free text, then we shouldn't probably have codable concept. Yeah, we should just have coding.
That's true too. We shouldn't be using codable concept. Codable concept means that you can either use code or you can use text.
So I guess it's a question of what do you think this is?
If we constrain the data type to code or coded, and then make the value set extendable, then it will work.
If you want to allow translations, then codable concept is the way to go. If you want to prohibit translations, then coding is the way to go. So if you want to allow translations, then you have codable concept, and then you could, as a separate thing, say that, and you must have a coding, that you can't just have text. And there's a couple of ways to do that.
Yeah, I think that might work too. I mean, put an invariant in and sort of constrain it to code.
Yeah.
I don't 100% agree with that interpretation of extensible, because the FHIR standard does say data type allowed. Like if the value set doesn't cover the concept, alternative codings or data type allowing text can be included instead. And that's verbatim from the FHIR standard.
I think you'd choose your data type differently if you didn't want to support text. Yeah. So I guess the question is, do we think it's a general purpose extension for capturing whatever people want to say, or is it very explicitly going to be a set of concepts that we want to represent? Yeah.
Am I going to put in their Sonic list name? Like,
yeah, but like, people don't know what it means, so they won't. They won't.
Yes, I actually think that would be a reasonable use as we've actually defined it. This is I've got a context that I want to put around this, basically, and opening up to extensible, and that was what I assumed we were going. We were allowing people who have a need to put a label on a name to essentially put a label on a name. Label. That's what this does.
Yeah, and but it's also like, if you did want to, I guess, constrain it downstream, that would be on the cards.
Yeah. Well, if you want to have special processing based upon a certain value here, then you say, look, you in effect you say, if the codable concept that you've got means so and so, then I'll do special processing. And if the codable concept doesn't mean this, then I won't do special processing.
Yeah,
and then
I think
if people put in extra values that aren't one of your preferred codable concepts, then you don't do any special processing.
You don't know what they mean. Yeah. I think that's like a very open. It's like, it is a pretty basic kind of thing to keep it pretty open, and as long as we're not saying this is a very explicit set of things that we want to represent.
So in a particular situation, you can say, I want you to always give me the IHI information using the appropriate coding. And you say that in your particular conformance stuff. You don't have to say that in AU base.
Yeah, true. You can say one of these names has to have this extension with the IHI validation. Yeah.
Also, one of these names has to have this extension with this coding value, with this value.
Yeah, if that's it. Yeah, you could write the rules. Plus, you could also write whatever constraints you want to put downstream. So I think this is the most flexible. So I hear required
with that required change to extensible is more flexible.
Yeah. I think that will allow other codings, but the probably the other thing maybe is, I've got this as a repeating extension as opposed to so there should be, allow more than one of these.
Yes.
Well, if we're opening it up to future use by anyone, yes.
And even if we weren't, I don't think our set of concepts in the value set will be mutually exclusive. So I think we would have to allow repeating.
The other thing we could do, but I don't think it would, I think it would be less good, would be to allow multiple values. So I have an extension, and the extension is, here's my set of name contexts in a single extension. Or I can say, here I have a collection of extensions, and each extension is a single name context.
It'd be more like name context then.
Well, yeah, because I don't well, because the extension is defined as essentially a data element. So the 0 to many, if we're saying there are many instances of name context and they're all different, the 0 to many needs to sit at the extension level.
Yeah, it does. So I think, all right, having looked at that, was there anything further to add on that? We're going to need some narrative to describe what this is for. I will gladly accept volunteers, otherwise I'll draft something to look at. So I think having this discussion, it'll be pretty general. Our context, so I think, should I drop person name? I don't think that actually makes sense.
I'm also thinking here, so is there, why not practitioner name?
Yep. Actually, for general purposes, like it would be person name, and it would be practitioner name.
And practitioner role name. There's a name in practitioner role, isn't there?
That's not our
No.
FHIR, I don't think. Is it?
No. Just
Oh,
practicing.
sorry, I heard organization role for some reason. Ignore me.
Yeah, I made it individual just because I didn't want to bring in organizations, but
And I don't, yeah, that'll be one of the things that I probably raise in terms of feedback, is I don't think we need to, yeah, that we need to consider that.
no, I don't have a use case yet. But like, if the question is, we're just saying we're not going to address organization with this extension, given the name of it.
I mean, yes, once you write it this way, we wouldn't,
Yeah.
given its URL, it's not really something that we could apply to organizations. So I guess that's the choice of defining it this way isn't we're not going to do it now. It's we would need a separate extension if we chose to go down that pathway.
Yeah, it's not a general name extension. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's worth having different ones for people and non-people, just because the uses I think are often different.
Yeah, I think the coding, the different uses would be different. I think mainly.
So this one would wind up being for patient, related person, and practitioner.
Yeah, practitioner. Yeah.
So it's then covered all of the individual people.
Okay, we'll go with that.
And we might not have any use for it putting it on person name or related person or practitioner, but it's so general that we don't want to be saying we've made it nice and general, but you can't use it there.
Well, I guess too, like even practitioner, I can immediately say, should I do like HPI validation?
I was wondering if that was a requirement. Yes, and other kinds of purposes. It's a very similar use case for the reason we brought this in as to why you might need it for practitioner.
And so then you could have a code which is like something like National Health Identifier validation. And so it can be used for IHIs and HPIIs.
But I don't think we would, because okay, no, and I absolutely agree. It should be on person name, because you will have an abstract person concept often linking these things, especially if you've got records of that one being a patient, a related person, or a practitioner, and then you'd want to know which one was the IHI name and which one was the HPII name.
Yep, good point.
Yeah,
therefore different. Yep, and they've probably got different business rules around the information you need to supply them, and even if they don't now, they could in the future.
Okay, so do you think I should just do that then? I'll add that code.
Yeah, why not? We can, if it's in there, that means that when it gets sent out with the agenda and notification, we're talking about this. And can you send that to the AU Core TDG list? Because this originally surfaced from the AU Core folks.
Yeah, it's a lot different than they originally suggested as well. So
it sure is. So yeah, we'll have to do the walkthrough. Yeah.
Yeah, I actually think it's got a lot of advantages doing it this way. But the plus it's generally useful, I think, this approach. So that's good. Were there any other?
I guess then we should have two examples with it. One using the IHI example, and another one using something completely different. Like, what was the one that Angus suggested?
I don't know if we do that though. Like it's more that that's a possibility, not that you can apply your own label.
Not an example that we want to encourage.
Yeah.
Oh, the Sonic Lab. Yeah. No, I'm not suggesting I'd do that. Like my system's name, my laboratory system's name, because we just have one name.
What you can do, Brett, when you've put this and put up the initial branch, is put out a request for seeing if, like a call for if anyone has specific context that they want to be considered for inclusion in the initial set.
Yeah, because it's been because we end up spinning up our own terminologies. So we're essentially introducing a new that's the code system. just basically use scheme and naming there as well. So that's just like it goes along with the item and it's similar to other AU-based code systems. But again, we'll need some narrative and some
So we
description
could
of that.
see people sending values like Queensland Health Hospital record indicator on an identifier, on a name.
I guess
We'll
if
see
that's
what
their
people
business,
come up with.
yeah,
Yeah.
like if there's well-known things that have some scope of sharing, I mean, they're all candidates to get added to the.
And I guess if you're oblivious to this, then you're just going to go by preferred name, like it's oblivious what the extension is. Yeah.
Yeah, you can just test all the names if you want, or whatever you probably do now. Yeah, I guess
Unless they start conflicting things and doing something like primary name or official name, individual name context, official.
Well, yeah, that's true. But yeah, we haven't addressed. There's also the interesting thing as what happens is two names in the set have this marked,
Yes.
right? And we haven't said anything about either.
Well, if somebody sends you that claim, then they're sending you a thing that is just difficult, however they've said it.
Yeah, I think if you don't understand what that extension is, it should be safe to ignore the extension, shouldn't it? So
Yeah.
So if they say official name, then and I use some other name because it's got the actual use thing as official, then that's their fault, not mine.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Look, you could put
You can put some narrative. Yeah,
put some narrative in, like it's a
Yeah.
misuse to use this to
Yeah.
say instead of to use this field instead of using name use.
Yeah, that's good. I think that's good. I'll get some narrative in here and get this out to the branch. It should be in the branch now actually, but I'll give a reference to everyone about where that is once it's got more content and we've done these additions. But that was helpful. If there was nothing else,
You shouldn't actually, thinking of my suggestion on misuse, you probably don't need to say that, because there's a general thing that if it's in an extension, then it's ignorable. And so if we shouldn't need to tell people to follow good practice everywhere, because
unless it's a modifier, which it's not.
Then the use,
So so this is just I think true. It shouldn't affect anyone. Like use has its own definition and has its own rules. So I think it's I mean, you can put what you like in here, but it hasn't got the same rules as name use, right? So not that helpful to do similar things. All right, I might just leave that. For IG publishers, I did this as fish with AU base, and so it's mixed in with the XML, and that works just fine. So it's interesting. We have thought about maybe converting AU base to use fish, but it is a bit of an exercise. But in the interim, it's perfectly reasonable, I think, to build out this stuff. It's going to create some authoring things, but it is a very much easier way to generate this content for sure. I've got my 40 lines that are creating free resources as an example. So it is a pretty easy way to do things. Anyway, by the by. Cool. That was good feedback. I've got all that, so that I'll try and turn that around and get that back out to the group via email and out to the AU core group as well.
So when is well, I guess we're talking about that. So obviously there's the next FHIR working group meeting. Is there still another one in December? So are we going to hold one on the 20th of December?
I think that's doubtful if people are. I think I might say we're not going to do that.
Okay, so next one for January.
Yeah, it will be January, and obviously that's going to be pretty early in January. So I think we'll have to work this out. I might get together with co-chairs before the end of the year, and we'll try and work out
Okay.
when the next thing will happen. But I think, yeah, the last week before Christmas is not really the best time to have a.
I suggest not January the 3rd. I suggest January the 10th or the 17th.
Yeah, it's a bit like, yeah, maybe we'll delay. We might even, I don't know, because I guess AU4 is going to come back online too, Danielle. Would that be right?
Yes. If you
I just got to
show
offset
the
week,
calendar,
that's all. Yeah, just sorted.
the calendar has, I think, some of the placeholder bits, including for the FHIR Working Group, in January.
Yeah, I did. I just dropped the
So
meeting thing, but
just push the month, yeah, to. So I would suggest, because as I agree with there's
yeah, that's not gonna happen.
2 for some reason, 3rd and 10th.
Oh, something I've got weeklies happening from here, so something bad has happened, so I will offset that. So I guess I'll keep it probably. It doesn't matter. I'll try and I think I'll try and offset with AU core just because of the way it's been. So I guess that leaves us the 17th, but I'll fix this calendar entry which I have broken.
Yeah, I think that would work, because I think you've got a series. So I think if you just
yeah, I think
edit the
I
10th.
updated it because the date was in the wrong time zone, but I fixed that but made it weekly because it's not weekly. I can't find it there. I'll have to look it out. I'll have to do it again.
Okay, so 17th
yep,
is the
17th.
proposed return. Okay.
Yeah, I think that's yeah, so it's quite a long break, but that's yeah, I think it's not time of the year to be having.
Assuming we approve the eRequesting project proposal today, I am fine with that. If it's not, I demand a fortnight, the next fortnight for us to.
Well, if it
or by electronic vote.
Yeah, by e-vote. Yeah, we'll definitely do it by e-vote if it doesn't.
Cool.
If we can't do it today. But having said that, I'll move on. So our next item is to look at yes, on that. So yeah, was to look at the eRequesting project proposal. I've left this very late. This should have gone out earlier for people to have a look. But I was hoping we could get a walkthrough of this. So this is really the proposal for the creation of the requesting IG. So it's really initially that is just accepting that there will be an official HL7 AU requesting IG.
I've just realized there's some mistakes in the release timeline that I'll need to update.
No, that's not okay.
You mean in the
let me get it.
in the PDF?
Yeah, like balloting of
balloting
of
1 July
version 1 is,
2024.
it's quite out. Yeah.
It should be 20. Is it 24? I thought we had 2 years.
Yeah, we do. So it's out by
a year?
quite a bit. So I'll update that, and what we'll talk about when those deadlines are actually, like now, what the proposal one is, so I can present that to the group, and then we'll update the project proposal form itself and send through an updated one.
Yep. Yeah. So right at the bottom, Schmidt's Brent.
Yep. All right. I can't edit it anyway. Do one of you guys want to present?
Yeah, I'm happy to do so.
So you can scroll. Yeah,
and I've got the timeframes as well in a more detailed form. So if you want to scroll past the cover page, and Angus speak up as well, because both, you know, this is coming from Andy, Angus, myself, and Jeremy Sullivan from Department of Health. So this is the AU eRequesting FHIR Implementation Guide, the official project proposal. I know we've all been talking about this idea now for quite a while, and this is coming in from that national context of moving forwards with national eRequesting solution. And to do that through both the FHIR accelerator, but really to have a HL7 Australia FHIR implementation guide and go through the HL7 Australia process for this. So, I mean, the purpose of this, of the project, which is essentially the AU eRequesting FHIR IG is the project, is to develop and maintain a FHIR IG that does that, basically, that addresses eRequesting. We expect that we do need to adopt AU Base and AU Core, and also feed into AU Core and AU Base as we need to. That the project evolves, continuing to maintain and make available drafts, continuous integration drafts, go through connectathons, also make available possibly even ballot for comment or something that earlier. Ideally, this would eventually cover the requesting and fulfillment workflows. There'll be a project scope statement that comes out next year, which will talk about where we've scoped for what that R1 is. But overall, the concept of the requesting IG is to do that. We've put in there where we think the usage of this product is, noting we're staying away from national architecture solutions in there yet, though that may come in. That this would be for people who are building diagnostic requesting repositories, the clinical systems that are creating diagnostic requests, and provider systems that fulfill them.
Excellent.
But
I like
also
what you've
point
done
out,
there.
also point out at this level, it's not path or RAD, it's just requesting in general. So.
Yes, the project scope statement that comes out will be clear on which bits we're scoping out for the R1.
Yeah, so can I just ask, is this gonna just be diagnostics? Or are we, is it like, are we going to e-referral in general?
So the intention, both for the technical design group that got put up and approved, and for FHIR Solution and that government has, is to have a repeatable, overall defined solution that we use. And the first place we're working through that is in diagnostics. There is some consideration I think we need to do around whether we can define the overarching content now. Do we split this into more than one IG? Noting, of course, there are other parts of the ecosystem that come into this, which like things like booking and scheduling, which have been solved in other spaces by having separate IGs to do different parts of the workflow. At the moment, we want to kick off this project, call it an AU eRequesting FHIR IG, and undertake the work to discover, in conjunction with the work the government is doing, how we'll solve that.
So to Brett's point, should the words diagnostics be taken out of the use of product?
No, I don't think so, Angus. I have a few conversations with you and Andy about it. My view is that at this point in time, without going into a lot of details about the analytics of the different use cases, is that there is a high probability that the other requests, like say for example, requesting for enduring medical supply and other social services, etc., might be quite different from the diagnostic request. So I'm comfortable with what it is being crafted at the moment, leaving the door open for other sort of requests to be defined, and it might well, as Daniel said, lead to splitting them into other different IGs. But at this point in time, the focus should be on the diagnostics. So I would like sort of it to be kept as such. The only comment that I have is that the 3 bullet points under usage of the product is more of about the users, not about the usage of the product. So if we want to keep the 3 bullet points behind it, my suggestion is change usage of the product, to this product is intended to support the the following, so those 3 bullet points. So that statement of usage of the product my suggested change would be this product is intended to support. So that's
I'm
the
happy
only
to.
comment.
Yep, I accept that. I don't think you
Yeah.
have any issues with that, Angus.
No, no.
Right, we'll make
I-
those changes.
Yeah, I think Stephen's comments are good too, because primarily, like, it's going to be pathology and imaging and other diagnostics initially.
Well, for now, yes,
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
the part that we're tackling.
That's
now.
right.
Yeah,
And I think this project proposal is good, with the caveat of my kind of a comment about changing that sentence. And I would like to leave the door open, because we don't upset other people like the federal government who wants to have something broader, leaving the door open for that, with the proviso that more work needs to be done.
I think it'll help the group as well, because I think if you say e-referral, a whole bunch of people are going to turn up with expectations around something else.
Indeed.
Yeah.
So that's my suggestion.
Yeah. So,
but there is another document to come, which will be the scope. Like this is the broad forever type working group, which one day might do referrals. God help us. But there's another.
Why God help us?
Angus, are you trying to talk them out of approving this? Because I feel like they were about to approve it.
No, I shouldn't.
Well,
I'm just saying there's another document coming that narrows the scope.
You are doing referrals. It's just
One day we will. One day we will.
No, you are. You're
and
doing
that's
referrals now.
that's right. This is the one day. This is the project proposal, not the scope
Can I
statement.
just ask then? So what are we thinking? Like, what's the rough timeline here where we get diagnostics sort of put away, and then we can start thinking more seriously about the e-referral use cases? Because obviously that's where we have interest, and I know Jane has declared her interest. E-referrals.
So I'd say it's beyond 2 years, and that's not to say we're starting in 2 years. That's saying in 2 years we hope we've completed the diagnostic parts, and we then sit around and talk about where do we drive the ship now. And, it doesn't mean that in 2 years we're going to do referrals.
While we are doing this, we're not just going, oh, let's just, like, we are intending to, while we go through this, to do that overarching use case, to understand what we can define and work through about the overarching at the same time as we are. We're trying to do the base case plus and explore that through the specific case.
We can't ignore, while doing diagnostics, we can't ignore it needs to be generic enough to do these other future things.
That's good. That's what I want to hear. So I'm thinking that through the technical working group or through the TDG, we will be bringing the e-referral use cases, bringing that lens to the data models, to the flows that we're actually putting into
not the nitty-gritty of them, but the high level transport of the payload concept of e-referrals.
Yeah, and in relation to that, we do have use case support. And I would be keen to have some of those use cases as we're going through being worked out. Like for eRequesting, like our R1 scope, we'll go, well, these are the use cases essentially that we're solving. But I would like us to be working out those other use cases during this period.
And Paul, you've been in the connector sons that it's really that separation of tasks and whatever the task points to, so.
Yeah. I think it is that simple, actually, at the end of the day there, Angus, that
we can have a task to point at whatever object we need to request or send around. And
there's certainly slightly different concerns, I guess, around the patient choice aspect in those cycles too. So I think that's the sort of thing we can work through through the TDGs. But I'm keen to actually get to a point where we have an IG, I guess, that we can actually make sure is in line with the IG that actually comes out of this work as well. So I just want to make sure that is still everyone's understanding, that we're not really limiting the scope of the conversation within the TDG to just.
Yes, that's right.
That's good. Ruben, you had your hand up first.
Thanks, Brett. Nothing, no issues with the content I see or the commentary so far. My comment is that this project proposal, very surprisingly, doesn't mention the word Spark to Accelerator at all. I'm wondering if someone can clarify what this project's relationship with Spark is, and also whether we can add some content making that relationship very clear.
Now, I'm happy to do so. The template changed, the project proposal template changed so that it didn't have like associated accelerator or anything like that. And the advice I got was this is how to fill it out.
Yeah.
So
the title of the artifact won't have Spark in it, is where we landed. The group is going to be called, and that group did have, the original group proposal did have Spark. It was a Spark TDG, and it's called that.
it is still a sparked
Yeah,
TDG.
yeah,
The advice I got is project is in this proposal sense is a misnomer. It's actually product name. So, and that Sparked is not the part of the product name. Sparked is the project in the accelerator by which this product is being created, and to write what is essentially, I guess, a product proposal.
Yeah,
but where I'm happy to change that based on advice here.
I'm not so interested in the naming of things and teams as much as I am in the project description, kind of clarifying whether this is part of the Spark Accelerator work or not.
Okay.
That's really it. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. I will add
that could be a forms thing as well, as we could probably have, because at the moment we've got the TDG. It should say Spark.
Yeah, I would like.
Yeah, look,
I would be like it too.
Yeah.
I definitely recall the AU core proposal having some mention of Spark in a couple of places. So if we can adopt the same approach, I think that would clarify things and not leave people scratching their head. Thanks.
Yeah, because I think that we primarily just landed on the group is a Spark group because it's going to have participation from broader than HL7 as well.
And I suppose, can I also, because I do want to say here, because again, because the scope statement will be really clear about the fact that it's the accelerator doing stuff, because we're doing the R1. Like this, what I understood about the project proposals, which made sense to me, is that this is essentially a proposal for HL7AU to have a new product, basically. And that the template itself didn't have a lot about any of the fact that Sparked would be building that for the next 2 years, and that was all up to the scope statement to put all of that stuff into it.
Yeah, I think the scope statement goes into more who's doing what, and
But I'm still happy to add a sentence into the project description if that's everyone else is comfortable with that, to say that this is the first 2 years of the project are being undertaken by the Sparked accelerator.
Yeah, that'd be good. Thanks, Daniel.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, I think there's been a lot of talk about where to mention Sparked and how to mention them, and we're trying to work through that.
Longevity of one against the other.
Yeah, it's kind of like both. I mean, the Spark program wants some notoriety because that helps it exist into the future. But also but I think it's
from it not existing in the future.
Well, I think it's important too to know why some of these things can happen. So it's so it's important for us to make sure Spark is mentioned. But I think there was also a bit of concern about saying, is this not an HL7 Australia thing if it's got Spark on it? And that was, I think we've allayed most of the discussion on that. So I think that sounds good. And Richard, you've been waiting patiently.
Yeah, couple of things. One followed on what we were just talking about was, if part of the explanation for why this project description does and doesn't say certain things is because it's a product description, why not call it a product description instead of a project description? That's I mean, The other thing I was wanting to talk about was this is diagnostic requesting. I think it would be useful at some point, but maybe in the scope thing, to make clear that this includes things like a request for a lung function test and other such completely not pathology diagnostic things.
The scope statement will have to be clear enough, and that will come to the FHIR working group for us to have clarity on what gets proposed. There is a bit of work to do, so it's not going to be anytime soon that we give you the scope statement, because there's some work to do in the technical design group to essentially work through what we really are scoping this into for R1. So I expect that probably more to even be maybe a March thing, where we are working on this. We know there's a broader direction, but we need to go, well, here's the bits that we're going, this is R1.
So basically, if we can get this approval, we can say what provision the IG space.
We can start working on this
put all that
basically
stuff.
once it
Yeah,
gets
you can
approved.
start to get it all looking like an IG. Yep. You've got lots of interesting background to feed into that, but it's kind of like the group has to meet and do the business.
Can I talk now to the target release time frame? And I'll share my screen. Let me do that. Yes, I do want to continue share my screen. Okay, let's try and see. That's just so tiny. That might be a little better. That's year one.
Fine.
This is the year two we want. So what this is doing is ballot is actually proposed for February 2025.
We should put a year
publication.
on this.
Yeah. That's what I was looking at it and thinking, I think it accidentally got copied and pasted from like AU Core or something, because they're off.
This is 2005. Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. So from this January, that's 2025 there. So yeah, February 2025 is when we're proposing that actual ballot, and then going into publication in June, July, really.
Look, I imagine when Andy and I wrote it, we really didn't know, and we just put a stake in the ground somewhere.
Yeah, and I missed that when I looked at it. Sorry about that. I'll update it, but that's our time frames, and there'll be a ballot over while we're doing an IG for validation piloting. We might do a ballot for comment at the same time, if we can.
Yeah.
Similar to what AU Core is doing. So I guess we'll learn from what the AU Core ballot for comment outcomes were, and whether that's a good thing to repeat.
No one's going to complain about adding time onto the project.
Okay.
Except Department of Health.
Department of Health, yeah.
I was just about to say that we might complain. We might complain about that.
But
Hey,
we're extending to your time frames.
But if we actually reach the destination, that'd be good, wouldn't it? Yeah.
We wanted to do it a year earlier, but now that you were giving us an extra year.
Any questions about the release timeframes?
Are there any chances that we could start the pilot, say July 2024? I mean,
no. Well, I mean, I don't think so. Piloting, I mean, that will actually come out of the community, because this is year two. So we're starting here. So we're currently in December over here.
Yeah.
So we're in use cases, scoping, definition.
Yeah.
We're starting engagement around piloting kind of now. Because we need to get people involved and go, well, who's going to fulfill what? And we need to build out this IG, and there's connectathons there, and it's not on here, there'll be face-to-face meetings, because there's one in February about eRequesting.
Yeah. And I
which
guess
you'll know about if you're the eRequesting thing. And there's a whole bunch of things as we build out to doing the more like official validation bit, where we're kind of comfortable we've got something, and what we're trying to do is really confirm and support that build out into products.
Yeah, and I guess our vendor leadership here is going to be tracking pretty closely what's going on, right? And it's big connectathoning and
Is there value in having a connectathon between March and September? So year one, we've got a connectathon in March, and then the next one is in September. Is that longer than we want? I don't know. It's just a question. It's a bigger gap.
It's something we'll look
than
at.
some of the others.
Yeah, I guess I'm going to stop sharing. It depends on what you're asking for. If you're asking for as part of the eRequesting TDG and we want to get things going, can we do and should we be doing an event in between? I mean, I'll answer that here anyway, that what's been on the table are sparked connectathons, not just HL7AU ones, where we're bringing together the day specifically around the e-requesting and so forth. And if that's where we end up wanting to do that, and I think we probably will, then we'll plan that out with the technical design group basically and organize the event.
And I think that would be a much more intense vendor-centric engagement than the open public HL7 stuff, which I think is much more general and open to various participants. So I think, Andy's made it excellent. So that's still a thought bubble and heading towards what that would mean and how that, because it's part of the validation activities, trying to prove out that the standards are working as well, to try and get that intense stuff happening. Yeah,
you're gonna have to reassess, within 6 months, like, do we have vendors with repositories? Like, where are we? We can plan a connectathon now for 2 years, or in a year, but where are we then? We can easily pivot and say, let's do a connectathon every third month if things are going crazy. If not, then it's about getting engagement, not connectathons.
Yeah, because I think once vendors are in dev, I mean, they can run a connectathon for half a year altogether, right? Because they got to make sure it works and they can test together and stuff like that. So
are there any more questions on the project proposal before I motion that we approve? With the understanding that I'll make the wording change from Stephen Chu and from Ruben there, and update that target release thing to match what I just showed.
So do we want to vote on that today?
I would love it. I motion for approval.
If there's no real problems, I'll be very happy.
Yeah, I second that.
Oh, excellent. Anyone against approval? I hear none. And anyone abstaining? Do so. Christy, is this one for Christy abstaining? So having said that, congratulations, TDG. You now have a.
Well, now you can send it to the board for us. So I'll update that ASAP and send that to you so that you can both send it to the FHIR Working Group and send that approved draft to the board for approval.
Amazing. That went.
I might just add, from an expediency perspective, the board is meeting next week. So if you want to try and get this in before it's the 13th, before the 13th, then we can approve it there.
I'm going to do it in the next half hour.
Nice. Yeah. Generally how it goes is they say, yes, we trust the FHIR Work Group. So it's I think that's good though that everyone has worked through that. Nice. I think nothing to add on that one. Let me just get back to here. So that went well. I just had there were a couple of follow-up items I just wanted to touch base with. I hadn't got any answers. I think Richard, I think we had you tasked to ask about NDIS identifiers for URLs.
Yeah, I was looking at the minutes. I've completely dropped that. I have nothing to report back.
Oh, well, that just makes
apart from an apology.
Better about my drops. That's all right. I think that's just something going around on having an NDIS profile, we kind of came to the point of saying yes, we want a official identifier. That's fine. I have stuff there about private insurer identity as well, which I think, I'm not sure, we had some items about maybe getting a list of private insurers, and maybe talking to Services Australia. So I think that was kind of a.
Well, there's a list that we were using with Sonic, and I know it wasn't with Sonic. It was another project we're doing for theatre bookings, and I think it was an ATO list. So that would be a starting point.
Yeah, we've got 2 lists linked in the GitHub. So there's a GitHub that has like a whole bunch of stuff from our previous comments. And I think Danielle Bancroft, we had an action on her to do something. I don't know if she's come back about it.
It was to talk to I'll put it here. Precedence? Well, she took precedence. I don't know, but that's I think what I just noted from the meeting. So I talked to players, but yeah, I don't know, because I think I think he's put like those 2 lists are the main lists. So I think maybe we just need to work out if there's issues with either.
Well, I mean, starting point would be a namespace. So then we've got something to actually put a set of codes against.
So we have some relatively detailed meeting minutes about the discussion and where we got to, and this is a request that we asked for Department of Health, basically, to get involved in this. So we do, and that is around the point around namespace, or actually going, let's use the ATO list or the Services Australia list.
So I think this is really, I think, whilst general is very much aimed at the eRequesting business, right?
It's around the claim. Is it claim coverage resource in particular?
It's in my frame, it's more a long-term goal. Like we just there's no code system, we can't marry it up, we don't do it today. But everyone can see that we have the insurers and we want to know who they are, and if we had a code system.
Yeah, so where Jeannie's actually using it, and you can correct me if that's different, but basically it's around theatre bookings. So to private hospitals.
That's general. Yeah.
So it's actually theatre bookings is the use case where it's active. So it'd be just nice to have something that at the HL7 Australia level rather than something at a kind of that Jeannie's doing rather than
So I think it's mainly just who would be the maintainer of that.
It comes down to which list are we going to use, and hopefully that list gets maintained by the owner of the list, and we have a namespace that we can use to say it's this list.
Can we go back to the meeting minutes, because all of this has been because we did discuss those things, and I agree with you, Heath, and a whole number of other things. Really, it was a good conversation on so that's that one there about what we ended up wanting to look at.
So that's a GitHub issue, is it?
Yeah, I raised this out of that was the conversation we were having around the private health insurers and the coverage. We first raised that as a GitHub issue, and then we went and discussed that GitHub issue in a FHIR working group meeting for like 45 minutes. And out of that came a number of actions, including going to the government about a whole bunch of stuff on like you said, having available and maybe even into the NCTS, those lists?
We have got this on our list of follow-up items for Services Australia. So we're still trying to coordinate a meeting with a broader group. We had Danielle, as you know, the initial meeting about the HIs, and we are in the middle of setting up a bigger meeting. So we do actually have this as an action item.
That's good. I would really feel very comfortable if Service Australia owned the maintenance, and so, you know, that would help a lot. And then we could happily publish if they just like, they don't need to maintain FHIR artifacts. They can, if they publish a set, however they publish it, and we can. It'd be better if it was NCTS doing it.
Yeah,
right?
I think I think that was one of the places that we got to, is if we can have like that permission and that becomes available. If they're happy to take that on, great. And if they're not, then to have a similar relationship, like we do with some of the other things, where that is a pipeline into the NCTS, which does the FHIR enablement and publication and maintenance of that side of things.
Yeah, it's just like because like as a working group, we don't know what should be on the list, right? And we don't know what the changes are or when things change as well. So well, we don't have any formal feed of that information. So I think Service Australia would be in a much better shape to do that.
So that list on the Services Australia doesn't have a list of codes published on that web page. Would there be codes sitting behind that somewhere, Christy? Or
look, I've got no idea the answer to that, Heath, but that's definitely something that we can follow up. When we had an initial meeting with Services Australia the other week, they were they've got a lot of FHIR projects that they're about to start as well. They are completely on board with supporting this as far as so that's the question, I guess, of working with them. What does that look like? So that's definitely a question we can ask. I think I had some initial conversations with Danielle. I think once we set up those further engagements, we'll get Danielle in as well. I'm not capable of explaining some of this technical stuff to them. So I think we'll need someone else from the working group to be able to come in. Those are the sorts of things that we can start to explore.
Yeah,
I actually will correct myself, because if I scroll down further, there is actually a list of codes, and they appear to be exactly the same as the ones that were on the privatehealth.gov.au site. So,
as I understand it, and I think Dushi did an analysis there, there's some very small differences, but otherwise are the same.
Yeah, that's good. I think if we note the differences and why, I think some of these are interesting. Yeah.
The thing for me is that this is a moving target, and yes, Services Australia is obviously the place to maintain that, but do we publish it somewhere other than where it already is, as part of a FHIR resource? Because I think
we formalize it
as long as we say here it is and this is the source of it, and those codes are always published by Services Australia, then there's nothing more to do.
Yeah, I think we'd probably like resources like it, but if NCTS is tasked with it, they can just maintain it and they'll come out in the monthly syndications then, which would be ideal.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes.
Because then you'll get a feed of what are the current set, as far as and you get a whole syndication mechanism as well as just a page. So it's better in some ways.
But they're not really code systems. It's not a code system. It is an ID.
Yeah, they are not really codes. True.
We did argue about that.
Yeah, we did argue about that.
And I don't think we got anywhere on it. But to maintain an enumerated list, like an actual enumerated list that you can resolve, there's only so many tools FHIR offers you.
It also wanders off into, is it part of, like, if they start saying if there's namespaces attached to these entities as well, there's probably the namespace registry question as well. It's like, so if they identify namespaces,
but they're probably scoped. Like the namespaces would be kind of a scoped thing. Like HPIO scoped namespaces. It's probably health fund scoped namespaces or something like that. So
maybe, maybe that's a way. That's a mechanism for sure. But assuming they don't want to have their own, right? This is we haven't kind of addressed some of that.
So I guess one thing is for us to convince the NCTS that they are a suitable organisation to expand their scope to include this sort of information, because they have the right sort of infrastructure, have the right sort of skills, they have the right sort of long-term funding. And while it doesn't really count as terminology, it's, you know, they're probably the best placed organisation to expand their scope to include this stuff.
Although I see these as organisation resources.
Yeah,
so it's actually a provider directory.
Then you're a directory. Yeah, exactly. You start to add other properties. Yeah.
Now, I don't know if that starts coming into the agency's domain, kind of in that PCA sort of space, but
so you think maybe this belongs part of a provider directory maintaining organisation rather than a terminology maintaining organisation?
Because they are an organisation, with a identifier. I'm not sure who.
That true PCA could be a kind of house for that, but it's getting engagement, right? Because we have this list of however many insurers, and we want them all listed, right? So can we get entries for everyone? Yep.
Interestingly enough, when the NCTS was first envisioned, there was a corresponding side project called the National Technical Registry Service, which unfortunately didn't get up because, well, who knows, but it was specifically designed to manage this kind of information.
I did not even know that happened. There you go.
Yeah, it actually got quite far, and John Grimes, I know, did a lot of pioneering work on data models for it. And the idea was that you'd have a FHIR API as well as a portal that allowed you to manage these things and publish them. Still a good idea, I think, but yeah, we'll have to see where it can go.
That's where I got the idea of Sonic publishing our order catalog through the NCTS.
Mm-hmm.
Because I've heard that conversation. Yeah.
All right.
Where is the Health Direct provider directory sitting in all of this? Are they
the
still?
NHSD?
Yeah.
That's really consumer oriented.
It is very consumer oriented and to some extent secure messaging oriented. I mean, I think what this is reference data. And probably of more interest to specification and standards maintainers and adopters. I personally think we do need a national service for this. And yeah, ideally ADHA would establish something like this.
Yeah, I mean, PCA could be on the cards if there was a maintainer that would make sure that these entries were there.
Well, I'll put another one in the kettle, is that basically the hospital codes that are assigned by Medicare, and again in that theatre booking scenario, we've had to come up with private hospital codes, and we need a namespace for that. And I know from my work with Queensland Health years ago that each of the facilities within Queensland Health have a code that's been assigned by, I think, Services Australia or Medicare or whatever. Ruben, you probably know that better than I, but you know, every hospital in Australia has got a code, and it would be good to have that published as well.
Because I guess, is this all about claiming at the end of the day, or is it?
Well,
I think it's Eclipse, isn't it? Isn't we wanting this, at least in my scope, wanting this to know what number I have to give to Eclipse to claim?
Yeah.
I mean, I'm sure there's broader use cases than just that, but that's the 80% of it.
In terms of getting
what's acceptable,
in terms of getting the agency to do something about this, I was talking to people about this a little while ago, and they get and the suggestion was put to me that HL7 Australia should put together a proposal and send it to the agency saying, we see a need for a national thing like this, and we think you are the body to set it up, and with other bits and pieces, and that would sort of, something like that would be the prompt to the right parts of the organisation that it might actually do something.
Sorry, hang on. About what were you talking to them about? Like beyond like, shall we do a namespace for something in particular or provide advice on it? What was the body or the thing that you were talking to them about?
Should the NCTS be expanded to include namespaces and things like that?
Well, we're now talking about organizations. It's really...
Yeah, because I think there's a few things in play, right? There are. Because there's a codes, if you want to think of it just as identifying something, and if you just want, you've got namespace registries, which I think HSO in Australia is going to think we're looking at namespace registry.
So I have a comment for Richard here. The suggestion you came up with there is exactly what we did, HL7 Australia did, in response to the draft interoperability plan back in whenever it was, 2022, January. We actually had on the first page a suggestion under information sharing to establish a FHIR technical registry.
Okay, nice and recent. Okay, I was talking to someone who's joined since then, so.
Well, interesting. Cool.
I'd like to just announce here, Brett, I've made the changes to the project proposal for eRequesting, and I've sent that through to you for approval. So that's there.
I will forward it to me.
Yeah, and I guess circulation amongst the group to confirm this is.
Yeah, that's good.
I've made the changes we agreed.
Actually, that's good. I'll put out just a working group list with the updated doc, and so people can eyeball it. And then I'll try and just get the 5 minutes on the agenda.
Shouldn't this probably be discussed with the NCTS, TIS, National Clinical Terminology Service? Not pointing at them saying you do it, but as we've said many times, they have all the infrastructure. They are all over this concept, but they frame themselves as clinical terminology. So I would have thought they would be in the best position to provide fairly good advice as to what, because they know the ins and outs of this. They might go, yeah, maybe we should do it, or they might say the agency should do it, or.
Yeah, I'd like to see that we've got one place to go for all this kind of reference material than lots of different places. And in the end, it is just a FHIR server that's hosting NTCS, and it has namespace capability, and it has
well, that's one way to view it,
and all those sorts of things.
That's one way to describe onto
that's
server.
one way to describe it, but it's the National Clinical Terminology Service, and part of that includes the server that hosts clinical terminology.
It's more than that.
But yes, it's a clinical terminology service.
Just focusing on that word service again, it should be remembered that the NCTS remains an ADHA business service. And so proposals to change it do need to go to ADHA.
Yeah, it's a scope change, right?
Yes, absolutely.
Could be a contract change as well.
But I feel like you're jumping the gun of saying change it. Like, go and ask them, do you think this is your remit? Or do you think it's a separate body?
So what we can do is next year work towards having a collation of these kinds of things with some proposals, if people can do so. Heath, you sound like you've got enough idea of some of the use cases and problems that you could write those up, and we could hold at the FHIR Working Group and request that we get representatives from the NCTS to come to that meeting and we can discuss it.
Yep.
Yeah,
support that.
That sounds good. I think too, it's like HL7 Australia will definitely have a namespace registry capability that will cover the things that are published, plus replacing our OID registry. which is essentially organization level OID allocation, right? So that is just to cover what is published. So to have naming systems for all the stuff that is published. However, having said that, if there was a scope to expand on that, potentially people could start to add material to the name that namespace registry space, which is not this exactly, I don't think. So it's but it's more just that there's no plan, funding, or budget to do much, right? So it's mainly just covering what we need to do to have a complete publication, sort of set of artifacts. But, it is a
I
good
need
place
to
for us
run
to
to another
register.
meeting.
Yeah,
Thanks, everyone.
that's good. Yes, we are at time. Thanks, Ruben. And
so what's the action that for at least the private health ones? There's existing actions. Are we just waiting for those existing actions to get completed, or is there something that we can escalate? Or
I think we do. So we will tap Danielle Bancroft and see if she can come back. Richard, if you could see if you can undertake the action in December. I realize that might not be possible because it's end of the year. And Christy is continuing the conversation, I think, at the government level about working with Services Australia about making concepts available. The other piece to this, which we've talked about, is having, well, I guess, technical registration services on namespace registration. So I do feel like we've kind of added an action.
yeah.
And is that going to sit with, and I'm just going to volunteer someone, voluntold, Heath here?
I knew that was coming.
Well, kind of, because I don't understand. I don't have these use cases, so I can't articulate it.
You tried to look away then. Yeah, because
do we want to have? Does people want to like put your hand up if you want to work on this and can work on this?
Well, I'm keen to look at namespace registries because that's part of something I need to do. But I'm not sure this is the same thing.
I can document basically what I see as specific use cases for the need for these shared libraries of identifiers and namespaces and all those sorts of things. So
actually, that would be really good, actually, just to have those cases, because then because we've talked about various things, right? We've talked about like provider directories, namespace registries, and coding systems, right? Well, so they kind of
well, every identifier basically needs a namespace.
Yeah.
And people are making up shit right now.
Yeah.
And I think that's the next step. I think the next step is putting down the use cases, and we go from there.
Yeah, that's good, because then we can sort of tackle, what I think some bits are very doable, and some bits are more. I think a lot of the problems are not necessarily not having the right tools. It's more like who's going to maintain this and provide the content, right? And someone has to own it.
And not having duplicates of it, because I'm a bit concerned that we've already got a namespace registry, if I understand it correctly, maintained by the agency.
There's heaps of them. Namespace registries are just, okay, there's heaps of namespace registries out there. They're a decentralized concept largely. I mean, HL7 Australia's got some.
Yeah.
Every organization can have its own for all the namespaces they register.
Yeah, we've implicitly created namespaces that are in IGs that don't have a namespace registry either, right? And so we need to kind of formalize some of that. Plus, some of them are external, so basically just referring to other people's. So the agency has one and we use it in our IGs, right? So there's kind of that going on as well. But like I think for HL7 Australia, there's definitely a plan to publish a namespace registry that has all the namespaces that we use, at least, right? Because that covers where we got them from and what they are. And yeah, so that's effectively just completing the IG definitions, really.
So our whole is enumerated lists that aren't clinical, isn't it? Like that, isn't that where like there's namespace registries here, there, and everywhere that we can use. There's the NCITS to get clinical terminology. It's when someone deems a set of codes, enumerated list, as not clinical, we've got nowhere to put it, have we?
Anything where we need a system.
A system and a code that is not clinical.
So I don't think it's actually code system that is the problem. I think it is identifiers.
Yeah, because identifiers, like NCTS can publish code systems with that have URLs, right? And that is effectively a registry.
Will they publish something that's a system and a code for all the hospitals in Australia, like Royal Melbourne Hospital, RMH?
Exactly. So you take medical record number, right? So we've got a type, but we have to put in a system. So do we have a hospital ID scoped system?
Yeah, and
namespace that we basically say in AU core or AU base, all hospitals should represent their medical record number with their system.
Yep, and
based on this namespace ID that is based on this identifier assigned to their
and my knee-jerk reaction to that is, can't that be in the NCTIS? It's a code system. I go to it, it has a system, it has a code. Like, is my knee-jerk response. Like, but then
it's not a terminology. All right, that's the counter argument. It's not a terminology.
But all the infrastructure, like what to solve my goal, it's all what's the problem? Apart from you're not liking the circle I'm putting it in.
The infrastructure's not set up for it. That's why, because it's all around terminology, not identifiers, the requesting pages and things like that. Aren't set up for it yet.
But SNOMED is a system and a code, and all we're asking for is a system and a code. What's the barrier?
It's using the namespace resource.
And that's the difference. Angus is proposing we use the terminology resources to express the concept, and if you're saying namespace, and I guess that's some of the argument we're having, which is a good argument, and we should have it.
Yeah, and it's not necessarily clear because the coding system's easy to maintain, right?
Yeah, but there's also two bits to that solution. To actually have a hospital ID scoped namespace, you need the namespace pattern and the ID of the hospital.
Yeah, I get what you mean. Like your HPIO scoped thing, like you need the pattern and then you need the code to put as the scoping part. So the scoping part code to me is what I'm feeling like is just is an Onto server somewhere, perhaps NCTS. The pattern is a namespace registry somewhere that like the HPIO pattern is defined somewhere. I've read it many times. Like,
yeah, but
can't we reuse
not
that
a true
approach?
Namespace because it is actually a pattern. So, and that's where the agency is basically in a static page. I'm assuming.
I think, yeah,
specifying their namespaces and those patterns.
It actually might get more complicated too, because like I don't know about the scope, because hospital scoping is one thing, but say a hospital group wants to run an identifier across all their hospitals, right? It's like, and there's definitely multi-hospital scenarios where like I know multiple hospitals are running in the same system. So it creates, it is not necessarily that easy.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Do we also have the problem that there's organizations who want to be front-footed and create a system for their identifiers, and then there's oodles who don't, and then we're caught in the middle between we can't force them all to do that work. We kind of need a fallback system, and then it gets complicated because it's like, well,
I agree.
Do I use the Royal Melbourne Hospital's endpoint official one that they created, or do I use the pattern and code one?
And
they might be the same number,
if they
not the
go and
same
register,
values, but
if they go and
different
register their namespace, then we've got somewhere to actually look it up and say, oh, that's the Royal Melbourne's namespace.
Yeah,
It can be whatever they want it to be. We don't have to have these patterns, but they have to register it.
Yeah, if that was the rule, the namespace you used had to be findable in a registry system of some kind, right? That would work. People could just go and get it.
But it's so hodgy podgy. It's like whoever bothered to do it, and we have greater need than the ones who bother.
Is this going to be impacted by our work with the HIs at the moment? So we are heading down the mandating HIs, including HPIIs and HPIOs, as a primary identifier, maybe not the primary identifier, but a primary identifier. If everybody is using an HI, does that stop this problem?
Well, it depends on the granularity, and that's where Angus was going before, Brett was going before. Is it at the right granularity?
Okay.
And I don't know if this is going to change with what you're doing, but I know that Northern Territory hospitals all use the same HPIO, but they've got a Services Australia hospital ID separate. So it depends at what level, and then as Brett was saying, then you got your groups. And because the HI process at the moment is it's almost up to the organization to decide at what level do they want a HPIO. It's arbitrary. It's that hodgepodge that Angus is basically saying.
And it's also onus on them to go and get one, as opposed to onus on us as a group just going, we can create a code called Royal Melbourne Hospital without necessarily need to go to them and say, you do this. Right?
So we've got a system where we could have 3 different providers and us and the Royal Melbourne Hospital all give different systems to use to identify Royal Melbourne Hospital patient IDs. And then it means that anybody who wants to send them can just grab whatever one they like. But it means that when you're receiving them, you've got to say, I've got a system. What does this system mean? Oh, it's one of my 5 synonyms for Royal Melbourne Hospital patient ID.
Yeah, it's also what kind of level you're doing business as well, because like in secure messaging, you might have departments that have their own identity, right, for messaging, and that are part of a hospital, and things like that. So it depends, I think, what business you're trying to achieve as well, what the right reference is.
But it's also up to the software system as well, because it depends how they manage their identifiers that they're allocating. So if you start thinking about multi-tenanted systems and like your multiple CSPs and all those sorts of things, it starts getting really complicated because you're doing
which
things
is why
at
it
all
doesn't work
sorts of
too
levels.
well.
So even like a request ID could be actually unique across multiple organizations. It could be globally unique. It could be for a particular requesting organization. So
it feels like you need 2 patterns, like the fallback pattern, the scoped one, where we can sort of have, we've just made one up at our level. We've just made up a code to fit a purpose, and then it gets overridden, or it's almost like there's always 2 possibilities. It's that one, or it's the one that they have gone and assigned. But that's messy. But I can't think of another. How are you going to?
Yeah,
we can't do a project to sign them all up to make them create a namespace for themselves, and we can't prevent them from doing it either. So you end up with both.
You kind of say, hey, there's an official registry, and you could replace our placeholder if you want to, right? But that's going to create havoc in the history, right? As well. So it's but that's probably just life as things change.
But isn't that what the point of the type code is in the identifier, like we do with Medicare number? Like there's always the type, like, not that I'm promoting it, like you must have a system, shouldn't you? Like I was thinking there's 2 ways to identify an identifier is a Medicare number. You can look at the type code, or you can look at the system, right?
No, because like you take medical record number, you could have multiple medical record numbers from different systems.
For sure.
All right, it's a type is a type, but then there's actually the scope of this ID. So
so it could be like Queensland Health System, and then the type is that one of their hospitals within their system.
Yeah,
is that what you kind of mean?
But it's even like NT Health, right? You might you have an NT ID, right? But yeah, that's
they're all medical record numbers.
Statewide, yeah. Well, yeah. So it's,
I mean, you could have a pattern saying if you have a hippo, then use an ID that, you know, for your system, you know, construct something like there's one of the ones which is like national provider identifier at organization. Okay, so that's a defined one where it says, okay, stick your provider identifier and then do a couple of other bits and pieces, and that's your system. And so you've got a way of constructing a system based upon your hippo and things like this. So we can define something which works like that and use that as a default identifier. But a lot of people aren't going to like it, because one of the things is it's not going to look like, it's not going to obviously be related to their organization. It's just going to take their hippo or their Australian tax file number or the ABN or something or other like that, and stick that with a couple of other things to construct a system. And while that works, a lot of people are going to object to it because they say, no, we want something that's actually web relevant rather than something that's merely unique.
Oh, just unique is good for a start. Yeah, but yeah, I think yeah, honestly, I think we're gonna have to tackle these things in their silos part of the way. Yeah, so I think private insurers would be a good thing to think about. I think that's a good thing, and then maybe MRNs is exciting because I think that's where we'll turn up all the cases we don't know about.
I think talking about the two together is useful because you play one off against the other. So it's like, oh, this works for private insurers, and then you go, but it doesn't work for medical record numbers, and vice versa, you know.
Well, we already got a pattern for medical record numbers. It's actually, the agency is already specified a namespace.
The HVAO scoped one? No, there's another one, is there?
Oh, maybe there is. I have to.
Yeah, but I've picked holes. I've picked holes in the HBO scope. HBO scope is fine if it's in the scope of a type as well, because it doesn't actually say it's the medical record number in that URL.
But
so what happens if I have a HPO scope employee identifier?
Yeah, we use HPIO scope. Well, doctor identifiers, I think.
Yeah, but because of the variability of at what level a HPIO is assigned, they're not actually unique.
I know exactly what you mean, because
that's why we have the ABN scoped one as well. I think I think we've actually got two patterns at the moment.
So Sonic has HPO per lab brand name, where Helios just has one for Helios.
But a lot of integration components of the system of systems don't necessarily have easy access to ABNs and HPIOs, and that makes things complicated as well.
Anyway, enough calling in.
Let's look at Health Fund first, I think, and I would like to actually look at hospital identifiers as well.
Yeah, I think they're big ticket items, I reckon, and doable, right? Because I think there are lists of those things.
Well, they're managed by Services Australia. I mean,
exactly.
That's the benefit.
So we should be able to do it.
We
should be able to do it. Exactly. Yeah. And I think that would be super helpful because it's like a bit of a void at the moment as to what to do. So.
And I don't think a lot of people know that these exist. That's the thing. Yeah. So to actually bring them to the forefront would be useful. And I know there is some competition against HPIOs, but
yeah, it
brings it to the forefront.
It's the place where bad things happen are the standards vacuum, right? Where because people just inject stuff. Anyway.
One thing that's going to happen is there's going to be a variety of identifier of systems used for lots of these identifiers. The thing is, are they going to be widely used or just used in small groups? So people working in this space are going to have a way of coping with the fact that there are 2 or 3 ways of representing this group's identifiers, and only one way of representing that group's identifiers, and 2 ways of representing another group's identifiers. And so we won't get down to just single ways of representing identifiers, but we can reduce the explosion of possibilities.
And I think with Spark, we've got the opportunity to have this discussion as well, and make it more, what people are more aware of it and the importance of them, and not to just go and pick your system that whatever you care for.
It's very easy to do. I find myself already doing it. You just go sonichealthcare.com/my thing I want to define my thing, you know.
Oh yeah, that's it. And at least if we've got a preferred national one, then people can look up a translation from the Sonic Healthcare one and the Helios one and the best practice one to the preferred one. Yeah.
And
anyway, I'm gonna have to drop, so
yeah,
I'll see if I can.
Oh, me too.
Leave you on the call.
I'll send you my notes, Brett.
Thank you, Michael. Much appreciated.
Good luck with that. See ya.
The last bit.
Bye.
Don't worry about the last bit. Anyway, cheers.
Okay. Bye.
Cheers. Bye.